Woman Who Chat is sponsored by Grow Radio. Grow Radio is an online radio station dedicated to bringing you a different podcast on the hour every hour. I'm proud that Woman Who Chat is played on Grow Radio every Tuesday at 3 p.m. and Friday at 8 a.m. and to be part of their podcasting community. If you want to listen to the station, explore their shows, get your podcast onto Grow Radio, and check out many of the blogs to improve your podcasting skills. So head over to growradio.uk today. Welcome to Woman Who Chat, and today I'm chatting with Julia Leask of Leask Advisory Solutions. Hello, Julia, how are you?
Hi, Sandra. I'm very well. Enjoying the fact that it's near the end of a week, because everybody has a hard week throughout whatever time of year it is, don't they?
Absolutely. We've got that Friday feeling today. So
oh yeah.
You're listening to this, it doesn't matter. We're on our Friday feeling. So we're heading into the weekend. Julia, I've invited you onto my podcast today because we're going to talk shortly about understanding your financial. But before we get on to that, I'd love to know how you got into the financial world and tell us a little bit about your journey. Were you always in financials, or did you have a past life that we know nothing about?
I went into accountancy basically because I was in the 1980s. It was a case of what can you go into that's going to be secure for a job for life. And it was a case I wanted to do accountancy because I could, be guaranteed a role of some sort. But my passion is actually helping people. I thought, well, it's going to be a stepping stone to helping people at some point in time. And I was on that stepping stone for nearly 25 years. So having sort of worked with being employed, being an employee, sort of build myself up, being trained, being a qualified accountant, working with blue chips, had my family, and I decided to give up work because I wanted to look after the baby after 9 IVF treatments. After 6 months, I was going to kill him because the grey matter just didn't stop. The coffee nappy mornings didn't do it for me. So going back into work, there was no part-time work in sort of the 2006. So I set my own business up. And I found out that the SMEs only understand bookkeeping, tax returns, year end. So I ended up doing that. But that's not my passion. My passion is more on the forecasting, the planning, the getting the business owners' ideas and the what if scenarios and putting numbers around that and enabling them and empowering them to actually make their dreams come true. Because I get a buzz out of other people's achievement. I achieve when they achieve. We are a team. And that's what my clients say about me. I treat their businesses as if it was my own. So now that I've actually got to the point where I reinvent myself every 6 months, I'm now a virtual portfolio CFO, finance director, and I've been a trustee treasurer for charities. Again, I like to give back to society. So I'm giving back and I'm enjoying it. My husband's just retired from corporate life and I don't want to retire because I'm having such a good time. It's a case of, well, you do what you want to do when you retire, but I'm doing what I want to do now. So, numbers, yes, they're important, but it's not the be all and end all. You've got to have a viable business, and that's, helping people have the viable business.
Yeah, I really resonated with something that you said on your journey. You gave up work to raise a family, and I mean, no mean feat going through 9 IVF treatments. I mean, that must have been a very challenging period in your life. But actually, the coffee morning brigade, the sitting with the toddlers, going to play groups and all that, I did it, but I was tearing my hair out. I just needed intellectual, normal conversation, not comparing which washing powder you used, or which was the best nappies to buy and all those sorts of things. And I craved to get back into the working world. I think I lasted a very short period before I had to go back and do something. So, I mean, obviously you've got a love and a passion for figures, for financials. And I must stress here, you're no longer an accountant, as you said. You've got an accountancy background, which enables you to understand the figures. One of the things that I find is, especially when we're judging for the Woman Who Achieves Awards, is women in business enter and we ask them for their turnover for a reason. We want to know roughly where they're sitting in, so we can compare like with like. Yeah. But it isn't all about turnover, is it?
I was going to swear then. I better not. No, it's not. Turnover is vanity. Profit is sanity. And cash flow is reality. So, you've got I set my business up and I'm not a charity, but the clients didn't realize that, or they don't understand that. So nobody should set a business up and expect to be taken advantage of. And there's a lot of people out there, a lot of the ladies in the group, and they're so giving and caring that they'll give their stuff away. And that's not right, because they worked hard for it. So you've got to actually pitch yourself. And as you say, compare like for like. But again, if their products are different or their services are different, it's hard to have that comparison. So it's basically, how successful are they at achieving their goals? I think that would be a better comparator, because then the goal doesn't have a value to it. And it's either you've done it or you haven't done it. You've done it well, or so that would be a better comparator.
And a lot of the marketing now, and a lot of the women in business are striving for 6-figure, 7-figure businesses. And I say, well, that's all well and good, but if your overheads are high, your actual net profit might not be as great as if you had a smaller business and you didn't have those big overheads of the big teams and the big tech and everything that comes with it. Because obviously as a business grows, so do the overheads usually. And I think there's a misconception around that, and if you hit the big turnovers, you're going to be paying more tax.
But I mean, not only that, but I mean, I've seen people or clients where they're grown and they've got the turnovers have tripled, quadrupled, but they're then working with the big organizations that are paying on 90 days. So they can wait 4 months to get paid. And I don't know about you, but when I get a bill in, I normally have to pay it within 30 days. So if you've got no money in the bank, if you've got no savings, you're crippled. So your turnover is brilliant, your profit is brilliant, you've got nothing in the bank. It's so what some businesses find out is that that the turnover is brilliant. You've got a massive turnover compared to this time last year or even this time last month. Your profit is fantastic, and you've got no money in the bank because who you're selling to aren't processing your invoices as quickly as you would like. I mean, the other thing is, if you don't like accounting, it could well be that you haven't actually raised your invoice, so you're a month late. So they're going to be it's going to be 5 months till you get paid. So you've got to understand what your ideal client looks like, because one of the parameters that you could have is that they're actually going to pay you on time and at the terms that you've agreed. Because often the bigger organizations say, we're going to buy on our terms, and that's not right for you.
And I learned that the hard way, and I've shared this before, but I'll share it now, because this is a common mistake that a lot of people make. When I set up my first business, we were rolling, we were expanding, I was taking on new people, had office premises very quickly within the first 3 months. And it got to, I think I started the business in the July, we moved into the office in the September, and in October, I couldn't pay the salaries. And I thought in my head that we got all these bills, we've done all this invoicing, but I needed the cash there and then. And that's when I got my first rapid education from my bank manager on cash flow, because nobody had ever talked to me about it before. And it doesn't matter how much you've got coming in, it's what you've got in the bank that matters, isn't it? And you need that cushion.
I mean, it's also important to actually be working with a good bank as well. I mean, I think nowadays it's not the norm to have a bank manager. You've actually got to have the services online. So it's got to have good services. I mean, I've actually just recently moved over to Starling from one of the traditional banks because it's more convenient. That integrates with the accounting package I use. So if I spend, it's in my ledger straight away. So that saved me a job. And I don't know about you guys out there, but if it can save me time, that's worth something to me, because my time is worth money. So if you don't like accounting, if you don't like numbers, it's a no-brainer. Do something awesome. It's automated. And
I think that was one of the things I realized. And I've got a lovely software package now. It integrates with my bank accounts. All I have to do is go in and reconcile it once a month. And it's easy. What I see is what I've got in the bank. It gives me data as well, and I think that's important. Yes, I did learn how to read a balance sheet. It's still like reading a completely different language to me. I'm not, let's say I'm academically challenged on the maths score. It took 3 attempts to get my O level. That shows how old I am as well. So numbers don't come naturally to me. How I ever gave birth to a head of maths. My son's a head of maths teacher, God only knows.
Yeah.
But I do find it challenging, you know, and I ran my business on a spreadsheet for years.
Yeah.
And then got into all sorts of problems with that and understanding that. And I think, you know, yes, we all have accountants and they do a great job, but they're not there to give us the advice as much as we would like around the financials of the business, financial planning, aren't they?
I've got to sort of fess up here and say that my profession is not the best at being proactive. So they will answer your questions. However, if you don't know what questions to ask, they won't tell you, because that's because they're expecting you to ask them. Then they can charge you for it, unless you've got a package where it includes some inquiries.
You know, people when they're starting out in business, they need to get a handle on the figures, don't they? They need to get understanding. So some of the ideas that, you know, if you were starting out, things you would be expected to know, or maybe things that, you know, they might want to read up on or something like that, or where they can get that information.
I would actually suggest that they actually try and find a very good bookkeeper, because it'll be worth the investment to get a good bookkeeper that can take the responsibility of the accounting away from you, and they will keep you on the straight and narrow. Once you've actually got your foundation of a good solid ledger, you can then grow and build. And then also what I've found that with a lot of clients is, you know, they're fantastic at what they do, they've got a passion for what they do, they hate numbers, therefore that's where they fall down. But if you put a graph or a chart in front of them, they can see that the line's going like that, not like that. They understand it. Whereas if you put a spreadsheet in front of them, which may or may not be accurate because there could be a cell wrong in there somewhere, you know, it's giving people what they need in a format that they need to understand to actually take control back with their business. Because you're in control. However, if you've got the 10 hats that every business owner has, you've got to delegate what's not your strength. You know, and if bookkeeping is not your strength, get somebody to do it who loves it. Because I've got people who I can work with who love accounting and tax and bookkeeping, and it's a case of, well, go away and do it, because I don't want to do it. So
absolutely. And I think that's the thing when you're starting business or when you're running a business and you are on that scaling up, you know, you need to delegate, you need to outsource those tasks that you don't enjoy, because I could spend a whole day on my accounts. It might take a bookkeeper a couple of hours because they understand what nominals to use, whereabouts it sits. I mean, fantastic. A lot of the packages today sort that for you. And I've got my software at the moment that I'm using is quite intelligent. So it guesses, and once it's seen a transaction go out every month, it's the nominal, and it says, is this right? And that helps a huge amount. And the VAT as well, you know, but it's very challenging when you have what I call number dyslexia, or you don't
but I mean it's not something to be ashamed of. It's just it's not your bag. So, you know, I was actually talking to our PR representative in the group yesterday, and, you know, that's not my bag. I've got loads of content and I've been shoving stuff out all over the place and I've not been getting that visible. You know, that's the theme that we've got recently, getting visible. So it's a case of, well, you know, let Abby go away and do it. So
and that's the thing, you know, play to your strengths, isn't it? So I don't profess to advise anybody on their financials at all, because it's not my area. It's not my area of genius. You know, it's not where my passion lies. In fact, I used to have an awful swear word that I used to refer to my accounts. And I think that actually I dread sitting with them. I dread actually doing them. It only takes me an hour now, but it's that whole thing I've built around the figures. So moving on, we talk to women about understanding their financials. You know, whether you're a sole trader, whether you're a limited company, you need to do some sort of end of year reconciliation and accounts. Should women be trying to do that on their own, or should they be getting an accountant to do that?
I would say get an accountant to do that, because I mean, there's so much legislation these days. I mean, even something as simplistic as, you know, you realise that your turnover has gone over £85,000, or you're registered for VAT, things like that. You might carry on and do your sole trader and think, oh yeah, I've done it, I don't owe anybody anything. And then HMRC come and say, well, actually, we're going to fine you because you should have registered. So an expert can tell you that, whereas it's not worth your while going grey over it.
Yeah. And, you know, the companies you work with are all varying in size, and they're quite established companies, a lot of them, aren't they? And they're looking to...
Yeah, I mean, I've got one startup which is actually multinational, so I question the startup status, but hey, that's just me. So.
Yeah. But, you know, you work with them, you work on their financial planning. You're, in a way, you're the absent financial director or the CFO.
Yeah. You know, in essence, they can't afford a full-time one of me, so I help them. And then, as has happened recently, I'm helping them to a point where they've grown that they need a full-time one of me, and I don't want to do it full-time because I enjoy working with lots of different companies. You know, that's what's I can learn from one client and then transfer that knowledge to somebody else. You know, I don't need to be just within a square in the box. I like to actually have the diversity and, you know, the mixing of the different industries as well, really.
Yeah, yeah. And I suppose in a way you go in, you sort of lift them up, pick them up, take them forward, and then replace yourself.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's what's difficult, because in effect, you know, it's been my baby, and then handing it over, it's difficult to actually, well, yes, I've got to step back now. You know, I've got to let go of the reins. My time's over.
So without breaching any confidentiality, what are some of the biggest nightmares you've seen when you've gone into a company, or lack of understanding?
Just the perception that accounting and bookkeeping is cheap, that people don't value what the profession do. And that across the board is, you know, some people don't even sort of value a bookkeeper or a financial professional as great as an administrator. And it's a case of, well, actually, you do need it, because, you know, at the end of the day, if we don't do what we do, you can't get paid. So,
Yes.
You know, you've got to actually bring it back to what they're getting out of it as well, as to, you know, and then it's not a cost to the business. Having a good bookkeeper or accountant is an investment, because that investment will be paid back when you actually grow and are more efficient. Because again, you could be spending costs on things that are too expensive. You know, we've got lots of professionals in our network, you know, who can actually do cost efficiency, you know, making sure that, you know, you're not overpaying. You've renewed your contract with somebody and they've actually increased their price, whereas people going to them first off, they're getting a reduced rate. Things like that shouldn't be happening, but you don't know because you're busy in your business.
Yeah. And, you know, that's one thing I've learned from understanding my financials as much as I can, is I do a financial audit every quarter. I go in, I look at all my direct debits, I look at what I'm paying out for things, I look at all my memberships, I look at everything and think, am I getting value for that? Am I still using? You'd be surprised. I still find things that I'm paying for and think, I shouldn't still be paying for that, you know, or it's a product that I've since replaced and forgot to cancel the original for something else, or memberships I don't use, you know, or organisations that I don't. So it's
I mean, the classic one is that you've got an annual subscription with something and you think you've cancelled it, and then they actually charge you again. I mean, I had one recently where I actually had to contact them 4 times to say, look, I cancelled it. Here's the cancellation email. Pay me back.
Yeah.
So they paid me back, and then they charged me again the next month. And it's a case of no.
Yeah, and it's keeping an eye on this, because a lot of these subscriptions are auto renew. And, you know, I think they should be, you know, you have to opt in to renew, but they're not. They are. And how often do we read the detail on insurance policies and things like that? But they are auto renew. We're busy people. We get the reminder letter through. We say, oh yes, I must deal with that, and we forget because we're off on doing what we do best. But these auto renews can catch us out, can't they?
Yeah. I mean, that you just get the email, we've charged you. In this case, what was that for? I mean, at one point I cancelled a card just to actually stop it happening, which you shouldn't do. But, you know, when people just aren't responding to you, what can you do?
No, I've done exactly the same. I've put a lost or stolen in simply to get that card removed and a replacement, because you've got no way. Some of the subscriptions, and this is one thing I found, some of them go through Apple, and so you have to check your subscriptions in there. Some of them go through your direct debit in your bank, and then others you think, how on earth? And they're taking it from your debit card, and there's no way to stop it. So I think it's keeping an eye on the financials, isn't it? Not assuming that at the end of the year your accountant turn around and say, hang on a minute, what's that for? And, you know, you have to have some financial education yourself to make yourself aware.
But, you know, as I've said before, it's not a crime not to be comfortable in that space. it's, you are allowed not to like numbers. It is allowed. You can have a successful business without understanding completely what's going on, the profit and loss. It is allowed, but you just need to have that guidance to, that expertise to, enable you to carry on.
Yeah, I mean, let's look at the converse of this. I mean, we talked about cash flow earlier, and cash is king, and it's what's in the bank account that counts. But I think you also have to remember that not everything in the bank account is yours, is it? Because you've got to remember you've got payments going out. So I've seen another tendency with some businesses that they actually look at the bank account and say, I'm really well off. I'm going to spend that. I'm going to have that shiny new car. I'm going to have that shiny new thing for my business, new laptop, new piece of equipment. And then they get to the end of the month and they need an overdraft, or they're in trouble, or they need to borrow because they've spent the cash. So it's about understanding the cash flow, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, the other thing which I've just sort of thought of, as you mentioned, the bank account, please set up a business bank account. The money in the bank account is not yours. Even if you're a sole trader, the money in the bank account is the business's, not yours. And you've got to separate your spending, going out buying clothes or whatever, from the, having to buy stationery for the business. It's completely different. And as long as you've ring fenced what's yours and what's the business's, you'll actually feel more in control, because you can then see, you then move your salary or wage each month to your personal account, and that actually that empowers you, because then you're being paid from the business. And I would also say, make sure you pay yourself. So one of the top things you need to do is pay yourself, and then everything else underneath goes in. So don't overspend on nice to have things and then stop paying yourself. You've got to pay yourself because you've earned that, because it's your business.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes I see in the awards entries that come in, and people say, I'm not yet taking a salary because I'm investing in the business. Well, you can forever invest in the business, but if you're not taking a salary, it's not a viable business, because you're not paying yourself for your time. And that, I see a lot of businesses burn out at the 2-year mark, because I think that they get fed up of not being able to draw that salary. They get fed up of being on the hamster wheel again. They come out to the corporate world, they think they're going to have a better lifestyle, they think they're going to have a work-life balance, but they don't pay themselves, and then they get so frustrated and they get fed up. And then whether it's their partner, their husband, or family members say to them, this business isn't viable because you're not contributing.
I mean, I think, my husband's got to admit this now. He had my business tagged as being a hobby for years, because I was giving back and I was making a difference, and I wasn't paying myself. I'm admitting it now, but now I am paying myself, and I've actually taken him on as a fellow director. So I'm paying him as well. So, we're a going concern. Yes, we're still small. Yes, we haven't actually, established exactly what David's offering is going to be through his IT directorship services, but you've got to reward people who are working for you and making a difference for your organization.
Absolutely. And and the other thing I would say, when you do take on an employee, make sure you're running a proper payroll. You're not just paying them, because I've seen a lot of businesses just pay people and not actually run it through a payroll because they didn't know they had to. Again, it's understanding what's needed, isn't it?
I think I'll take you back to what I was saying. Get a good bookkeeper. Get a good bookkeeper, and they will point you in the right direction, because the good bookkeepers are actually obsessed with getting it right, and they will not allow you to do it wrong.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice. And talking about advice, I always ask my guests to give a tip or piece of advice for the audience. What would you like to share with the audience, Julia?
I think it's just make a note and actually follow the numbers that make a difference to you and your business. And one of the other things is, do not price yourself too low, because if you price yourself too low, your competitors will go lower, and you'll just, you'll run to the bottom quickly. You've got to price yourself at a reasonable rate that you think you're worth. And, if you don't know what your prices are, get some advice.
Yeah. And just on that point, just before we finish, I think there's a big mistake when people come out of the corporate world. They work out what their salary was, they work out what they were paid per hour, And that's what they charge other people when they're in the services industry. And it's not, you have to build in your overheads and your costs to whatever you're charging, don't you? And value, you know, people have to pay for your expertise.
Yeah. But what I would also say is the hourly rate in corporate land actually has huge overheads around it. So the hourly rate that a corporate person would charge themselves out at is not what like somebody at our level would do, because we're more agile and efficient and more adaptable, you know, so we can react quicker we're proactive, whereas the big corporates, as I've said, take at least 3 months to actually turn around.
Yeah. Well, it's been great chatting to you, Julia. Today, I've been chatting with Julia Leask of Leask Accountancy Solutions. It's great to have been chatting to you.
Which is now Leask Advisory Solutions.
Thank you for correcting me there.
It's all right. We just renamed ourselves in the past 3 months, so it's okay.
Leask Advisory Solutions. So what we'll do is we'll pop the links in the show notes. So if you're listening to this, we'll put some show notes out there. We'll put Julia's links in there so you can link with her on LinkedIn. And again, we'll pop your website there as well, Julia. It's been great chatting to you.
Thanks very much, Sandra. I appreciate the opportunity.